All right, my name is Warren Gordon Crutchfield. I was born in Washington, D.C. because at that time at Women's Hospital in D.C., there was no hospital out here that would take people of color. All right, and from then I grew up here in Rockville. I spent my entire life here in Rockville. And from this era.
Let me just ask you really quickly: are the lights bothering you?
No. Well, do you want me to take off my glasses?
No.
No, it's okay.
Sometimes people close their eyes when the lights are bothering
them.
them.
Yeah, I'm trying not to.
They do it because they think that's how they think. Which is
but I'm okay. I'm trying not to close.
It to be bothering
yeah. And so, I went to school here in Rockville, and from there I went to college. There's one thing that was interesting, was that when I graduated from high school, I was talking to my dad, and he worked for a family in West Montgomery, and they happened to own Judd and Detweiler, which printed the National Geographic magazines down in D.C. So I came out, and he said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to work with you." He said, "No, you're not." He said, "You got two options." No, he said, "You got two options. You either go to college or you go to service." I said, "I'm going to college." I said, I'm going to college. And so there, I left the family, and I spent about six or 7 years away from here. And then I came back, and then I had a job in the school system. And I started in the school system as an elementary teacher. There was not too many black male in the high schools and junior high school at that particular time. So they put me in, I was 25 years old, so they put me in the elementary school system. So back then you had a traveling teacher in physical education. So that means I would go to Twinbrook or West Rockville or Hungerford, and then they would send me to Monocacy. All right, then I would go to Boards. Then I would go to schools in Clarksburg. So I was a traveling physical education teacher until 1960. I started in 62 till 1966. And what happened was, and again, people don't realize, all the playgrounds were segregated.
Okay, before you go on, let me back up. Tell me a little bit about your ancestors. How did they come to be here? What was? Okay. Well, my ancestors, Flora Powell, was a slave at the Belle Dawson House. And when they had the Emancipation Proclamation, which was 4 years, they was 4 years behind, so slaves didn't get their freedom until 1864. All right, and meanwhile, the Belle Dawson sisters had all this land, and what they did, and I assumed that my grandmother and my grandfather said, we would like to, since we are free, we would like to, purchase land. And from that, and the Belle Dawson would be over to my right, and they had all this land, they started purchasing parcels of land. But not only them, but the rest of the family, which was Woods and the Johnsons, all of them started purchasing land up here, which was nothing. It was briars and woods and all that. So, and they said, "Oh, yeah, okay, then I'm the land, we don't want it." So they came up and they cleared the land, and they prospered, and they had businesses. My grandmother ran a beauty salon down in Rockville, where right Snowden Funeral Home, but right between that, they had apartments and things like that. So we settled up here. Now, going back, it's amazing to me how they did it. With little or no money, saving pennies and dimes and quarters so that they could purchase this land. And from one generation to another, they said, it's not yours, but we're going to make sure that you have land, your family have land. Then the next generation, make sure your family have. Then it comes up to my generation, make sure that you have land. And I remember my grandmother, Flora Powell, and very strong lady, and tried to instill back then, instill the importance of family. And the family is what keeps the Afro-American Afro-American families together. If you don't have that strong family background, that person who in the family that you look up, that you look up to, that you see what they're doing, all of them worked. And when we grew up, everybody that I knew had mothers and fathers. I don't know anyone that didn't have a single parent, unless the only reason they had a single parent was, demise or something like that. But everybody had a mother and father, and I thought that was important. So with us, and I can remember very vividly, they would sit down, Mr. Oscar Wood and my dad and Miss Rosalie Campbell, and they all related, and they would sit down and talk to me about family and what it was and what happened and how that happened. and so with my grandmother, now when I started working, first I'm in Montgomery County. I say I'm going to New Jersey or somewhere like that, and then they talked to me and say, well, why are you going to do that? They say, you live in Montgomery County. And then I got a job. And so in that job, I started working, and then I got married, and I was living with my mom and dad. And my uncle was Claude Prather, and he was an entrepreneur. He owned pool halls, he owned grocery stores. And people don't realize this, there was an ice plant on Rockville Pike, and it was a one lane, and he owned that. And we worked for him. And people would come out of the district going up to Seneca and going up to places like for their cookouts and things like that. And we would sit there, but they didn't know it was black owned. Because we were out front, And he was very smart. So he would sit down and talk to me. And he graduated from Bowie State, which is now Bowie State University. And he was the first one in the family to do so. So he would sit down and talk to me. He said, let me tell you one thing. He said, you go to school. He said, because once you have that degree, nobody can take it away from you. So it's very important that you get the education. So during that time, education was the primary concern of the Afro community. You going to school. You may not be a teacher, you may not be an engineer, but you're going to get some sort of skills that will carry you on in life. And Carver had cosmetology, they had printing, they had auto mechanics and those sort of things. And people went into those various activities. And so education was our primary concern. And then after that came equality. And all of my parents were fighting for that, fighting for their children to get education. PTA meeting, Parents Teacher Association, was filled. And when you go to parents, everybody was there. They want to know what their kids are doing in school. And see, another thing that people don't realize during that era is that the teachers came mostly from the South. All right, so they came up here. They couldn't get a house. They couldn't live in apartments, so they lived in the community. So we kept teachers in our house. What a humiliating experience, because you couldn't do anything. You sit at the dinner table, and the teachers right there, and another teacher right there. So my grandmother and my mother kept teachers. And then my grandmother, his name was, we called him Mr. Waller, and he stayed with my grandmother from the time he got his first job here in Montgomery County, 30 years. He lived, they had a room for him, and every summer we should hate to see him coming. Oh, hey, he comes. We got to get ready to go back to school. Yeah, so it was an experience, and people don't realize that. You know, they didn't live in D.C. They lived in, some of them lived in D.C., but majority of them lived in the community. And that was quite an experience, because we were always around. You could walk down the street and they say, "Hey, how you doing?" Yell at you, "How you doing?" You go to church, they're in the church, you know. And so that was some sort of experience that held the community together. Go ahead.
Let's really talk about what people don't realize.
Okay.
What were some of your experiences? Yeah, I know you said you really had very little contact with
Right.
Caucasians,
Yeah.
because so what was the reality at the time? Just, you know.
Okay. The reality was that you don't go in a white neighborhood after dark.
Is that going to keep doing that, or is that?
Hmm? No, there's something else.
Right.
There's something else.
Okay. Start that again.
Okay,
The
you didn't go into white neighborhoods.
Say the reality was.
The reality was that you did not go into white neighborhoods after dark. You did not go to theaters from the front door. You go up the back. You go up to the back steps, and you sit in the balcony. You did not go to the restaurants. You go to a side place to order whatever you want. You did not mingle with the Caucasian race. You stayed in your area, and what happened was, if you did, then you would be questioned. You would be questioned. Well, why are you here? You know, you got to go around to the back door. You know, I remember very vividly. I used to serve the newspaper, the Evening Star, all right, big, and I had a man named name was Hilton, and I served the papers for 12 years, and he would come past and he would say, "Okay, I would like for you to go with me to distribute the papers throughout Montgomery, Upper Montgomery County." We had Upper Montgomery County, so we had Poolesville, Monocacy, Barnesville, and all those places. And we would go pick up our papers right at the Exxon station right there across from Richard Montgomery. So one morning it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and we were loading up the papers, and I was inside and I was stacking the papers. So an officer came past, and he asked Hilton, he said, "Hey, how's that nigger doing for you?" You know? And he said, "He's all right. He's doing what he had to do like that." And he went on thing. So, but when we got in the van, and he sat down and talked to him, he says, "Some people are like that. They have no idea, no respect as human beings. You know," he said, "Everybody is not like that. Not like that." And what happened was, we stayed in contact, and I went off to college, and he would come past, "How you doing in college?" and everything, and those sort of things that happen all the time. And and one time we were coming from Boy Scouts meeting, and that was quite an experience with Boy Scouts, because some of these scout leaders, they were in World War II, and like the Davis brothers, and we would go there and they would share their experience, and you know, we would go, if we would go to a Boy Scout camp, it had to be all black, all right? And so we were coming back from the Boy Scout, coming down North Washington Street, coming up to Martin's Lane or Hayti, and these guys come past and say, "Hey, you bunch of niggers." All right, and we said, we didn't say nothing. And we thought they came back, and we had stones and rocks, and we stoned them, but it was the wrong car. Yeah. And the police came in, and we were waiting for the police, so we knew we were fast, and we're gonna outrun them anyway, and we dispersed and all this. But they caught us. They caught me, and I went to the police station, and there was another kid. We went to the police station, and we sat down, and we told him what happened, you know. And he looked at us, and he said, "You all do not have any records." We said, "No, we don't have any records." And then he said, "We know your families, and what's going to happen is you're going to have to pay for the damage to the car." Yeah, but that experience was something that happened all the time. And then my personal experience is that we could have the white kids come over and play with us. And it was Berlin Apartments where Dawson's apartments are now. But we couldn't go over their house, their area, put it like that, to play with them. And we could never understand it, why they could come in our house and we play together. But they could never understand. They couldn't understand, but we knew why we couldn't go to their house. And then his mother said, "No, you can't play with him over here," like that. So that was some of my experience.
Do you remember how you felt about this, or, well, let me just ask you that.
Yeah.
Can you think back to what that?
Well, it was degrading. It was degrading to know that, you know, that time, that people felt that way about a race, about a race. And the parents would sit down and talk to us, and that kind of eased the pain, but yet they were still fighting. They were still fighting for equal rights. And it resonated throughout our history and throughout our minds, And the one thing I can say is that the education we had was solid. And the teachers made sure, because they knew, they could see the future down the road. And they prepared us for that, They did not take any stuff. You will learn your geography, you will learn math, you will learn science and things. And so they had a strong role in our lives. And we always talk about our teachers. And that played a significant part in our life with our parents, because they were in it together. They were in our lives together. And so they wanted the very best for us, and they tried to give the very best for us. And the one thing that we learned, nothing is given to you. You have to work for it. And that's stuck with us all in my generation, all throughout my life. If you want it, you're going to have to work for it. I remember this where I'm living now. My uncle owned the land. So we owned the property. And he said, and my mother gave me a piece of land and said, "You can build your house." And then my uncle said, "Well, I own the land right next to you, to us, because they are brothers and sisters." She said, I'll tell you what I'll do. He said, "I'm not going to give you the land. I'll sell you the land, because you will appreciate it more." I never forget that. "You would appreciate it more if I give you something." So I bought this property that I'm on now next to that. So those things, they said, you had to work. You had to work. You had chores to do. You had to work. Yeah.
And why do you think your parents, and it's not just your parents, it's your community, it's your aunts and uncles, why do you think they felt that way?
Because they knew how important that if you get an education and you get an education that you could move further than what they did. So what they were doing, they were trying to build that rock, that solid rock. So they struggled. You know, they couldn't walk this way. You got to bow. You got to clean the kitchen. You got to clean the facilities, you know. You had to work on the railroad. You had to work on the state road commission and stuff like that. So that's what they had to do. So here we come, we building. Okay, we're building. This generation, you will not do what I did. It's going to get better. And then that generation and this generation until my kids' generation. So they help to build that solid rock, and some families are still building on that rock. Yeah.
You're right. I want to clarify something. I'm not sure if I heard you incorrectly. Is it your great-great-grandmother who worked for the Bells, or your great-grandmother?
My great-great-grandmother.
Okay, because
yeah.
I think you said great-grandmother.
Yeah, great-great.
So if we could just, you don't have to go through the whole thing,
yeah,
because
yeah.
I can pick it up, but I want to basically start the phrase, my great-great-grandparents,
yeah.
if that's right,
yeah.
say their names, and then explain their relationship to the Bells
okay.
and
okay.
this land.
My great-great-grandparents, Flora Powell and Alpha Ross, worked for the Bell at the Bell Dawson House for the Bell sisters. My great-great Flora Powell was a slave, and they had a record of, because the slaves were a part of their property, and she was worth $216. Alpha Ross was a carpenter, and he helped to build, you know, the house of Bell Dawson. Excuse me. And what happened was, when they had the emancipation, the Bell sisters started selling land off of their property, and they started selling it to the slaves. And my grandmother, Flora Powell, Alfred Ross, the Johnsons and the Woods and all those people who worked for the Bell, the sisters, start purchasing land. And from then it grew. And from then it grew. They bought a little piece, then they bought more, and then they bought more, and they bought more. So that's how we and like I said before, they had the fortitude to have the family keep the property. And it's amazing. It's amazing to me that down through the years that we're still here, that from that originally slave family. Yeah, it's really amazing.
Thank you for redoing that. I appreciate it. Now let's talk a little bit about school. Where did you go to high school, and what was the reality about that?
Okay. Well, first we went to the elementary school right there in Rockville. You had petitions. We had so many kids. Some went half a day, and some went a full day. If a teacher was teaching, you had a petition. She might teach first and second grade here. Petition over there, they may be teaching third and fourth grade. You had outside facilities. You had playground was nothing. They didn't really cut the playground, so you had to go out to cut it, or you just played in the weeds. You know, the ball would come, and you could get on first base because it's coming so slow. You know, and so that and from there we went to Lincoln High School. The good thing with us living in Rockville, we walked. We walked to school every day, and nobody took us in the car. There were very few people had cars. You walked, and from here we would cut across a guy named Jim Veers property, Veers Mill Road, named after that family. And there was a cow field, and we would cut across the cow field, cross the railroad tracks, through the fence, to go to Lincoln Junior and Senior High School. And he would run us Yeah, oh yeah, he didn't want us to cut across. Get out of my property, you know. And we just kept running. Mm-hmm. We kept running because it's a shortcut. If not, we would have to walk up where Hungerford Drive is and where the car wash. There was a bridge. There was a bridge. Walk across the bridge, then come down Stone Street to the school. Well, we said that's too long, so we're going to cut across the field. And so at the school again, at Lincoln Junior and Senior High School, they had petitions. And petition where you had your 7th grade or 8th grade here, your 10th, 11th, 12th over there. You had your cafeteria, and then we had indoor facilities. We had a ball diamond, and then they built us a gymnasium, which is Quonset huts, you know, tin roof like that, and a basketball court inside. But before that, people don't realize it, before that, basketball was played in Jim Davis' garage right there in Lincoln Park. That's where the high school teams played their basketball. And you had to go up and sit in the rafters to try to see the games, to try to see. People don't realize that. That's where they started to play. I didn't play there, but you know, I remember going to the games. And then, like I said before, as we went from Lincoln Junior High School to Carver, brand new school. Oh, it was beautiful. Lockers and rooms, lights, you know, gymnasium, fields, and you know. Again, you had your auto mechanics and your dry cleaning, and you had all this brand new thing. It was great. We were the first class to go in to finish in 3 years. So that was 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. I mean, others went before us, but we were the first class to graduate in 3 years. So in your athletics, you know, who were we going to play? We couldn't play Richard Montgomery. We couldn't play Sherwood. We couldn't play Gaithersburg. So we had to travel to places like Pamunkey, down in Upper Marlboro, Winchester, Virginia, up in Piedmont, West Virginia. We would go to Fairmount Heights in Prince George County, or we would play teams in D.C. And so what happened then, if they came here, say for example, the teams from Winchester, Virginia came here and played basketball, what happened, they had to find houses for the kids to stay in, yeah, because they couldn't go back that night because the game was over 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. They wouldn't get home at 2 or 3 o'clock. Back then, the roads were not like it was today. So we kept kids in our house. My grandmother kept kids, and the Woods and other people, and the Davises, they kept kids in their home. So that's what we had to do. And if we went somewhere, we had to stay in the individual's home. So the athletics was all, you know, like I said, it was all segregated, and therefore we could pass Richard Montgomery, but we couldn't play there, you know.
And you had few choices for when you, I mean, you decided to go to college.
Right.
But tell me about what choices you had.
Well, the only choice I had was historical black colleges. I had a guy who was one of the most brilliant people I ever known was Dr. Calvin Rubin. And he sat down and he said, okay, you're going to college, and we're going to write these letters. And to all the black colleges like Florida A&M, Bethune, Cookman, Coppin State, Morgan State, West Virginia State, and all these schools. And I got accepted to all of them. And the one thing I remember, they said, you know, and they were pushing for it too, we want you to go to West Point. I said, I'm not going to West Point because I mean, personally, I didn't even know where West Point was. You know, I said, West Point, what is West Point? You know, and the thing that happened was I would have to go to prep school because I didn't have the background to leave the historical black school to step into West Point. So that means I would have to go to prep school to get into West Point. And I said, I'm not doing it. I said, I'm not doing it. So that quelled that, you know. But that, I remember very vividly, Reuben, they sit down and talk to me about it. You said, we'd like to go to, I'm saying, West Point. What is West Point? You know, and so I had no choices, but that's the only choice that I had.
So where did you end up, and what did you study there?
Okay, my first choice was West Virginia State College in West Virginia. Now, I wanted to be a physical education teacher, so I thought all you could do is play. You know, go play volleyball, basketball, you know, ping pong, you know, you do all that. You know, and then I left there, and I was coming back home. I don't know, I was 16 years old. I wasn't ready before. Then I came back home. I'm gonna tell you an interesting story. So I came back home, and there was a guy named Rupert Curry and Vincent Reed. And Vincent Reed eventually became the superintendent of schools in D.C. And I was walking down, and he said, well, what are you doing? I said, I'm not doing it. I said, well, why don't you apply to Maryland State? Okay. I said, yeah, okay, I'll apply to Maryland State. Because I had the grades. I said, okay, I'll apply to Maryland State. But one thing, why I never forget why I was working, all right? And back then I was working for Hex, a wooden loafers, either one, a Hex company. And you were like not a bus boy, I forgot what they call them. And you walk around, and you know, you with the little broom, and you pick up all that, those things. So what happened was this lady, you know, and she was the head of whatever it is, the head of the department, the head of the store. And I'm gonna tell you what happened. And she looked at me, and she talked to me, and she watched me a couple of times. And you know what she said? I'm firing you. I said, what? She said, I'm firing you because you're better than this. Yes, she did. Yes, she did. She said, I'm firing you. That's what she told me. She said, I'm firing you. This is not for you. You know, with that little broom and going around. She fired me. And I'll never forget. And then from then, I went on to, I went to Maryland State and you know, and graduated. And my experience is that, and like I said, I worked in the post office during my off, you know, when I came home for Christmas. I worked with my uncle in the pool hall, racking balls and things like that. In the summer, we worked, but that was a turning point in me. She said, no, you gone. I'm firing you. Yeah, she said, I'm firing you. Yeah, and my experience, like I said, I couldn't go to Maryland. You know, although I had the grades, I couldn't go to Maryland. I couldn't go to Duke. I couldn't, you know, back then, because they were all segregated. I think the first African American that went to Maryland, he transferred from the United States Navy Academy, and he played football. I can't think of his name, but I remember when that happened. Yeah, and so all of my education was from the Afro-American community. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
What were you going to say?
That's it. And after that, you know, going to grad school and all that, then like I said, and then, you know, you sit with other people of other races, you know, you say, you're not too bad. You're not too bad because, you know, you could compete. Yeah.
Right. I think I've got probably more than I need.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. I just wanted to ask you really quick about baseball and what did that mean to
you? That, yes,
yeah.
Yes. Baseball, when Jackie Robinson, well, before.
But what did it mean to the Afro-American community as you were growing up?
Well, before that, there was a guy named Joe Louis. Joe Louis was the heavyweight champion of the world. And that was the rallying point for the black community when he would fight, and he would fight a white
fighter. And he would beat him, and it was, you know, you turn on the radio and you listen to Joe Louis and Jake LaMotta, and he's throwing the right, and he's throwing the right, and the people would you know, go crazy, you know. And then Jackie Robinson came through, and oh, he broke the color barrier, and that meant a lot to young black kids that play baseball, because when we growing up, baseball was king. It wasn't basketball, it wasn't track, it wasn't football, because every community in Montgomery County had a baseball team. So that means there was more opportunities for, you know, not eventually, you know, not then when it happened, but it just opened a lot of doors, and it was very elating to us as young people. What are you? I'm Jackie Robinson. Then came Larry Doby. Then came Marilyn. Then came Willie Mays. So it was a big turning point in our community. Yeah.
But just if you could back up to when you were a kid, when things were still segregated, when there weren't the options, and when there weren't the Jackie Robinson. I understand baseball was not just a fun sport, but it was also a
professional sport in the Negro League.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
But also it was important for just for something to do.
Yeah, yes, yeah,
so
yeah.
Tell me the importance of baseball to the African American community, you know, prior to.
You know, after working and everything, what we see, they played baseball, you know, and we played baseball in high school, you know. And then after you get to high school, you know, there was really nothing to do, you know, after high school. So, excuse me. So each community had a baseball team because it was big. Baseball was the thing to do. Rockville, Poolesville, Germantown, Kensington, Sandy Spring, and so they played a lot of baseball. And then all of a sudden, the Negro League, the Homestead Grades, and things like the Monarchs, you know, they started scouting, and they came to Rockville, and they saw all these players, and in the area in Montgomery County, and they said, "Oh my Lord, we're going to sign you with the Homestead Grade." And so they went off and played, and we're going to start with the Kansas City Monarchs. They went off and played. So they got a lot of players from this area, the Israel boys and a boy named Bill Williams. And I remember, and then what happened is it galvanized the community. And I can remember we had a place called Johnson Park up in Gaithersburg. And they had a baseball time, night baseball time. I can remember going to see Satchel Paige and what you call them go up there. Dust be flying, you know. You didn't have all. It was sandlot baseball, you know, down dirt and everything. And people yelling and screaming, and it was a thing to do for the black community on Saturdays and Sundays. Yeah, and everybody had a chance, you know, they could play, would participate. So it was a big thing. It was really a big thing in the black community, and it kind of galvanized that community behind their teams. Oh, we're going to beat you. This is it. We're going to come down and beat you. You know, it was big rivalries, and most of them played in fields. You know, I don't know, but you know, you carve up the field and you cut the dirt and stuff like that. I remember that. They slide and dirt be flying, dirt be flying all over the place. You know, it was a wonderful time, and we used to go to baseball games all the time. But my experience in baseball, okay, you know, you wanted to be a baseball player, so I was fast, okay, and so they put me out in the field. I played center field. If a ball didn't come to me, I'd run the right field, you know, and say, maybe if you drop it, I get it. So one time I was at bat, and they threw the ball, and the ball hit me somewhere up in my shoulder. I said, "That's it." I said, "That's it. I'm not playing baseball." And then I gravitate towards track, and I tell people, where's the track at Carver High School? We had no track. Think about it. Where's the track at Carver? There is none. So we ran in the fields. That's where I got my training, running the fields over by Carver High School. And then we went to Morgan State for
I don't know, state championships, and that's where I got noticed. You know, didn't have any spikes, running tennis shoes, didn't even know what spikes was. Pair of shorts and something, just get out there and run. Didn't have the formal training. I didn't get my formal training until I went to college, till someone knew something about track, and then I blossomed. But in high school, you just went out there and started running. You know, I remember I ran cross country. Oh my Lord, the hardest thing I ever did. To run 3 miles as fast as you can. Oh Lord, I like to die. I said, that's not for me. It's not for me.
And you made it to the Olympic trials. Right?
Yeah. Well, I made it to.
When was that?
At 60. So I was out of college. Just okay, 64. 60. I think in 1966. Yeah, but I had the times. You see, back then, if you could run the times, you just went to the Olympic trials. And what happened was, I ran like a 9.5 in the 100 meters, and you know, they said you can go to Olympic. It was at Princeton, but I got hurt. I had trouble with my hamstring, and in the strain the hamstring, I didn't make it. But I ran the times and things too. You know, it doesn't make any difference. But you had to qualify with times back then. You know, you didn't get in if you ran the 9.5 and 20 something in a 200 and whatever. You could go to the Olympic trials as long as you had substantial standard. And I ran something called the Baltimore Olympic Club. I ran with the Olympic Development Club, and I had the time, so I had a chance to win, but I got hurt. I got hurt, yeah.
Sorry to hear that. I didn't know that was the reason.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap it up
yes.
now. If you could just tell me how you felt when things began to change in terms of civil rights.
When the civil rights came, it was a monumental decision, you know. And although it was on record in the early stages, it was still segregation. It was still segregation. And as years went past, it opened up. But there still was some bastions, areas of segregation. And to me, the civil rights means that I would have an opportunity, but my kids would have that opportunity to have the same equality as all people, that same education as all people. And I sit down and I talk to my girls, you know, they just, I mean, they know about it because I tell them about it, but they have, you know, no concept. And when I'm speaking about what you call me, you know, I remember they went to the prom, and what we did, we said, well, you can go to the restaurant, you're going to have a steak and a salad, we fixed that here, you know, and they bought their dates, and it was white and black, and they came in and set them at the dining room table, and we served them and everything, and then they went on to the prom. So it opened a big avenue for that next generation. And my generation, we came in, I mean, we reaped some of the benefit, but the generation before that would fought for that, they really reached the generation, because they could go to any school they want to, you know, they could sit down at restaurants and things like that, you know, and we could do it later on, but we felt that sting back then when we couldn't do it. And I think that's what's missing with this generation, because they have no idea. They have no idea the backs of the people who stood there in that good, you know. I remember, like after ball games, you know, and we come on, and the big thing was stop off at, they called it back there was beer gardens. And they would stop at the beer garden, and they had to go around back and sit out. You know, they had places for to sit, and they go order the beer from the back, and the white order beers from. They could go inside and sit, and they come out, and they would sit outside, and they would sit out there and drink beer and talk about the things like that. So, and when that broke, you know, they could go inside, but there was a lot of conflict in the early stages. you know, in the early stages of that civil rights. But it meant a tremendous difference to me. But to my parents, it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable, because now our kids can have the same equal rights as all people. So it's a big step. It was a big step, and I can remember, just not to read it. I can remember, I'm teaching high school, okay. I got teams. I said, okay, you're coming over to my house. We're going to have, we call this soul spaghetti. And my wife would mix up some spaghetti and meat and all that stuff. And that's the first time that the white kids ever been into a black person's house. It's a small and a significant change. A small, significant, they've never been there. They never sat inside the house, you know, during that particular time in history. And then what we would do, we would go to their houses. And that's the first time a black kid has been in it, sit at the table with a white family and have, you know, whatever, we had dinner and stuff. So those things made a tremendous difference in my life, you know. And as a teacher, you go in the classroom, you teach the kids. And you can't go on about what happened back in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. You go there and you teach whoever's there, you know. And that opened up a whole new field, because I can remember elementary school, okay? I go to Flower Valley, all right? That's where my daughters went. And I was a traveling teacher, so I go down the hall, and this little white kid come up to me and said, "Excuse me, sir, yeah, there's some milk wasted at room 4 and 4, and my teacher would like for you to get a mop and come pick it up." I said, "Okay, I'll do that." And I went and got one of the building managers, and I said, "Hey, you know," because you got to understand, we all grew up together. Now, I'm the one that had the opportunity to get education, but they still were working as custodian staff and engineer and stuff. But I knew all of them. I knew it because we all were part of that community. And I would go say, "Hey," you know, they say, "Okay, Crutchfield, we'll go down again." But I never said anything to that kid, because that kid has never seen a black teacher. I mean, things like that happen. They never seen a black teacher. So all the people of color he ever saw was cafeteria worker or the custodian. And so I walk down the hall, he sees me, he assumed that I'm a custodian, you know. And then, you know, I yell, I'm gonna say, "Okay, we'll take care of it," you know. And those sort of things that you confront. And in my education, as being one of the first black coaches in Montgomery County, you go to a game, you go to a game. I won't tell you what school, and I've always had white assistants, and they went in. And I'm talking like, again, I know everybody. "Oh, Crutch, we're going to win the game." I said, "Oh, I'm not going to win no game tonight, not because of my team," and, you know. And I agreed to go in and said, you know, "Excuse me, sir, where are you going?" I said, "I'm going in to the game." I said, "I'm the coach." They said, "No, you're not the coach. The coach just went in." And that's right. I said, "No, that's my assistant." No, you're not the coach." I said, "Well, just watch me. Who's going to coach this team? Because I'm not going to pay. I'm not going to pay anything, you know." And things like that you went through the early part of the 60s. The early part of the 60s that you went through. We go to another school, and I'm with my team, and we walking in, and they say, "Where's the coach?" And I said, they asked the kids. I said, "I don't know." The kids said, "We don't know where the coach is." And I'm walking right with me, and I'm walking right with him, and didn't acknowledge me that I was a coach. And the guy said, "No, we don't know where the coach is." Yeah. And then if I would go to a game, and I would sit just like I am, and you would sit there, and you beside me, and I only had one assistant back then. We didn't have 10 or 15, and I'm sitting there, and the referee would come up to you and said, "Well, we're getting ready to start the game, and we'd like to have your captains out there to make sure they don't have any running." And she looked at him, she said, "I don't know why you're talking to me. There's the coach right there," you know. And then they you know, they kind of step back. You know, they kind of step back. And so those are some of the things that I had to go through the early stage in the 60s, you know, in the coaching field. So, yeah.